All right. How's everybody doing out there today? This is Gold Pilled here with the Gold Pilled stream. And in this video, I'm going to talk about kind of world control, control at the highest levels. Have you ever wondered how seemingly everything is kind of in lockstep with the same agenda? Talking like more about corporations, how all the corporations, all the big companies, they're kind of all on the same page, kind of pushing the woke agenda, the climate change nonsense, and you know seemingly all working against us, the little person. Well, there's a very good reason for why everything seems to be on the same page, and it stretches globally. And that's because of a term called monopoly. I'm sure most of you know what a monopoly is. Well, we currently have monopolies in existence, and they're allowed to operate freely. They're just kind of disguised. And what I'm talking about is the investment corporations that own pretty much everything. And that is Blackrock and Vanguard. Those are the biggest two. And then the third one is, what is it? Something Street. Oh, I forget it now. State Street is the third one. And the funny thing about State Street is BlackRock owns State Street. So we're pretty much talking about BlackRock and Vanguard here. So let's go over to the browser and take a little peek at BlackRock and Vanguard here. All right. So this here is a lawyer site, and it's talking about the BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, their corporate governance and policies and priorities for 2022. Now, the reason that I'm pointing out this little tidbit here is because of the one specific area of interest that they're looking at. If you look here, these pronouncements from the big three, as they call them, these asset managers, they got a number of common themes, and it's emphasis on climate and the transition to a net zero economy, which, if you're researched in that area, the net zero is BS. So the whole climate change thing, it's just a narrative to help them usher in their end goal agenda. And the next one is diversity at the board level and throughout the workforce. So they want to make sure everybody's diverse and, pretty much give special privilege to certain demographics. And this last one is the big one: effective human capital management. So one of their big interests here, for the 2022 is how to effectively manage human capital. If you don't know what human capital is, that's the tax cattle. That's the ordinary person who works and breaks his back so the government or these big asset managers can get rich off of their backs. Effective human capital management. And it's probably also going to go into how to replace that human capital with robots that they're in the process of creating to take many, many jobs that would otherwise need human capital. So those are their three big themes that these asset managers are working on for 2022. Now let's go into how they control everything. Well, first of all, let's point this little tidbit out. the amount of money that these asset managers control, considering BlackRock, they're considerably larger than the world's biggest bank, which is the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. So that's the world's biggest bank. And BlackRock is considerably larger than that bank. That's how much money, in assets that they control. So here's an article that kind of goes over it. It's pretty good. It's written by a Dr. Joseph Mercola, and this is a little less than a year ago. Who owns the world? BlackRock and Vanguard. And it's quite true. The way this, the whole economic structure and the stock market and the asset management and everything, they've pretty much, combined everything together, got everything under umbrellas, and they got it down to where these two companies pretty much own and control everything. That's why, all these companies you see, they're all, the Intel term lockstep. They're all in lockstep with each other towards the same agendas and the same goals. And that's how companies can lose money, pushing a woke agenda, and it doesn't seem to affect them. They take big hits when they push, when certain companies push the woke agenda. And people boycott them and they lose, so much money. But they don't care. They don't care if they lose that money because, they're controlled and owned by these two big companies and it's all their money to begin with. Just like YouTube's never been profitable, and it could have been wildly profitable if they would have kept organic channels, but they got rid of everybody in favor of mainstream media outlets, and YouTube don't make no money, but it doesn't matter because they're owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. It's all their money, so the illusion of losing it doesn't matter to them. It only looks that way to us. So it goes in this article. The two corporations, they were created clear back in the 70s. And, over that course of time, they've managed to gobble up just about every company in the world. They completely destroyed the competitive market. So when you start clamoring about, capitalism, good old America with its capitalism, we don't have genuine organic capitalism. And we haven't had that for a long time. The competitive market is gone. They give the illusion of a competitive market, like there's multiple companies, competing against, each other for market space and, certain areas. But in reality, it's not competition because they're all owned by the same entities. So no competitive market, no more capitalism. Pretty much all the companies are under these two managers' control. And it says, it's one of the greatest illusionary tricks, ever pulled over the eyes of the people around the world. That could be debatable. I don't think it's the greatest illusionary trick. I'm sure there's other ones that could go higher, and the first one that pops out would be Christianity to me. That could be a runner for the greatest illusionary trick. And I'll take a moment to touch on that quick. My last video, spirituality, I said, I'm not going to garner a lot of support, for my viewpoints and my beliefs, on the world and reality. And, it looks like I already upset someone because the few subscribers I have, I already lost one after that video. So, I'm not going to apologize. Like I said, I'm not here to pander. And like I said, I'm not against, anyone that thinks differently than me, or, someone that, believes in, organized religion. If that's what you want to do and that's, makes you a better person, then you do it. That's none of my business. I'm just offering my opinion, and um, if you can't hear my opinion and accept it, and it triggers you and upsets you, so be it. Go find information elsewhere. I'm just trying to help, and everyone can have their own opinion, and I don't get upset when other people try to give their opinion. They can believe whatever, but I'm allowed to counter it. So, all right, that's enough of that. So, corporate domination. And it's a handful of mega corporations, private investment companies. They dominate every aspect of our lives. Everything we eat, drink, wear, or use in one way or another. These investment firms are so enormous they control the money flow worldwide. How does this scheme work? Well, pretty much it's like an umbrella. There's many private investment companies, and it looks like, they're competing on the market, but all of them investment companies, are still owned by Blackrock and Vanguard. Like, I said, the big three, which includes State Street. Well, State Street's owned by Blackrock. So it's the main two, Blackrock and Vanguard, and they probably even have part ownership in each other. It's this Dr. Merkala, who did this article, he calls it like a Russian nesting doll, where larger parent companies own multiple smaller companies. And they said in reality here, the packaged food industry, they're owned by a dozen or so larger parent companies. That's the whole industry. And goes in here to give PepsiCo and Coca-Cola as an example. You think, oh, they're fierce competitors, Pepsi and Coke. They're owned under the same umbrella. The those asset managers, they own both. So they're not competitors. They're more like sibling companies. And you put all the market share between these companies, and they have all the market share. So kind of doesn't matter, how much market share they have, because under the umbrella they have it all. And it's not just a packaged food company. This goes into every aspect of life. And it says here, these companies are publicly traded and are run by boards where the largest shareholders have power over decision making. This is where it gets interesting, because when you look up who the largest shareholders are, you find yet another monopoly. And it's while the topmost shareholders can change from time to time based on shares bought and sold, two companies are consistently listed among the top institutional holders of these parent companies, the Vanguard Group Inc. and Blackrock Inc. So it don't matter if it's publicly traded, who the shareholders are, how much shares they have. It just all goes up to the top of the pyramid, Vanguard and Blackrock. And this is the Pepsi and the Coke example. They're supposed to be the, fierce competitors. And it says, as shown in a film they reference, 3 of the top 4 shareholders of Coke are identical with that of Pepsi: Vanguard, Blackrock, and State Street. And the oddball shareholder of Coca-Cola that they don't share with that of Pepsi is Berkshire Hathaway. And I'm sure if you look into it, the Berkshire Hathaway is probably under the umbrella of either Vanguard or Blackrock. And it says these 4 are the 4 largest. So Vanguard, Blackrock, State Street, and Berkshire Hathaway. It says Pepsi and Coke are anything but competitors. And big tech monopoly. So like I said, it's not just food industry. The tech firms, they fall under this same pyramid structure, the umbrella. And it says you'll find them dominating virtually all other industries as well. You got the top 10 largest tech companies: Apple, Samsung, Alphabet, Microsoft, Huawei, Dell, IBM, Sony. Same thing. The Russian nesting doll. Facebook, they own WhatsApp and Instagram. Alphabet has Google, all Google related businesses, including YouTube and Gmail. The biggest developer of Android. Their main competitor, Apple. And Microsoft, has Windows and Xbox and, their Azure cloud. And, Apple has their cloud. And, at the one time they were competing for the government contract, who would get the cloud contract for the government, the, multi-billion-dollar deal, Apple or Microsoft. And you go back to it, and it's these same companies, BlackRock and Vanguard. They control all those top 10 tech companies, all the little companies under them. It all falls under BlackRock and Vanguard. You think the tablets and smartphones and computers, they're competing back and forth, all controlled and managed by the same two. So it makes you wonder, like Apple and Microsoft competing for that cloud contract. It's all illusion. It's just rabbit holes to look into and whatnot. No matter who the government picks, that money's going right back into Vanguard and BlackRock, because they control them both. Excuse me. Same small group owns everything else too. So it's not they say it's not just tech, it's not just the food industry. It is literally every industry that exists falls under these two managers' umbrella. It says, let's say we want to plan a vacation. On our computer or smartphone, we look for a cheap flight to the sun through websites like Skyscanner and Expedia, both of which are owned by the same group of institutional investors, Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. We fly on one of the many airlines: American Airlines, Air France, KLM, United Airlines, Delta, Transavia, of which the majority of the shares are often owned by the same companies. The airline we fly on in most cases, or I should say the airplane we fly on in most cases, a Boeing or an Airbus. Again, the same companies own the planes. We look for a hotel or an apartment through bookings.com or Airbnb. Once we arrive at our destination, we go out to dinner and we write a review on TripAdvisor. The same investors, they control and own all that. The websites, the airplane you're on, the restaurant you're eating at, the hotel, the apartment, the TripAdvisor, the food that's brought to the restaurant you're eating. And it says their power even goes much further, because even the kerosene that fuels the plane comes from one of the many oil companies and refineries that fall under that umbrella. Just like the steel, the aluminum the plane is made out of, that's from the mining companies that fall under that umbrella. So it goes from the earthly resources clear up to finished product and beyond in the virtual, all owned and controlled by BlackRock and Vanguard. The raw materials, they have it all. And it says the same goes for agricultural industry. The global food production. They're all dependent under the umbrella. They own Bayer, the largest seed producer. They own the largest textile manufacturers for making the clothes. They own oil refineries, the largest solar panel producers, automobile, aircraft, arms industries, all the major tobacco companies, all the major drug companies, all the scientific institutes. So Big Pharma, all the companies under Big Pharma, it's all under Blackrock and Vanguard. They also own the big department stores, the shopping spaces, eBay, Amazon, AliExpress. I'm sure Walmart's in there. They even own the payment methods we use, from the credit card companies to the digital payment platforms, as well as all the insurance companies, the banks, the construction companies, telephone companies, restaurant chains, personal care brands, cosmetic brands. No matter what industry you look at, the top shareholders, and therefore the decision makers, are the same. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, and or Berkshire Hathaway. And like I said, the latter two here are right under these two's umbrella. So in virtually every major company, you'll find these names among the top investors. And then the curious question is, who owns these investment firms? You know, if Vanguard and BlackRock control pretty much every company and every aspect of industry, who owns them? Well, we don't know, because the way they set the system up. Remember, this is like a gambling casino. The house, the house built the casino. The house, they built the games. They own the games. They created them. So the house always wins. It's designed for the house to always win. Well, that's what they did here. The system they created, that's created for the house to always win. So you want to look into who actually owns these two companies? Well, it's hidden. It's private. You don't know who exactly it is. And it says, diving deeper, we find that these major investment firms are in turn owned by their own set of shareholders. One of the most amazing things about this scheme is that the institutional investors, and there are many more than the primary four we focused on, also own each other. They're all shareholders in each other's companies. So that's what I was saying with BlackRock or State Street and Berkshire, being owned and controlled by BlackRock and Vanguard. They just all own each other. Gives the illusion of diversity. And it says, together they form an immense network that we can compare to a pyramid. So the very tippy top of the pyramid is BlackRock and Vanguard. And then you just go down the pyramid and it's just all the other companies and corporations. Even Goldman Sachs and Wellington Market, they're owned by, larger firms. And it says all roads, lead back to Vanguard and BlackRock when you follow the money. It says here, the power of these two companies is something we can barely imagine. And we'll go into that here in a second about the power that they wield. And it says, let's see, data from Bloomberg is showing that by the year 2028, Vanguard and BlackRock are expected to collectively manage $20 trillion worth of investments. So in that process, they will own almost everything on planet Earth. That's pretty powerful. That's a pretty powerful piece of data there. And when we talk about their power, how much influence and control they have, there's many that have been calling BlackRock the fourth branch of government. So they actually consider BlackRock to be a fourth branch of government, which, if about our government, the way our government was set up. We were meant to have three branches. They were to be checks and balances on each other. Well, apparently we now have a fourth branch of government, and I'm sure it doesn't fall into that checks and balances aspect. And the reason they call it that is because it's close relationship with central banks. And BlackRock, they actually lend money to the Federal Reserve. And they are the Federal Reserve's principal advisor. That's how closely connected they are. And the Federal Reserve, they're not a part of the government, but, he who controls the money controls the government. So that's how much power BlackRock has, that they're the principal advisor and they lend money to the Federal Reserve. And dozens of BlackRock employees have held senior positions in the White House under Bush, Obama, and Biden, and under Trump. I don't know why they don't mention Trump, but it's no different. Any administration, senior positions they get. BlackRock even developed the computer system that the central banks use. And these senior positions and the employees, taking them up in the White House, this is they call it the revolving door. This happens in a lot of industries, the big pharma, the banking and investment here, all of them. They CEO these big corporations, and then they move on to senior political positions. And then after, they serve the agenda there, they'll leave, and then, they're back into another CEO position somewhere, just making millions, and it's the revolving door. And when they get into those positions of power, they change policy and influence policy to be more beneficial for the big corporations they came from. Because in the process, they're just making millions and millions. So here it comes to who owns BlackRock and Vanguard. And Larry Fink is the figurehead of BlackRock, CEO, being its founder, chairman, and CEO. But he's not the sole decision maker. BlackRock, too, is owned by shareholders. The largest shareholder of BlackRock is Vanguard. And I'm sure the largest shareholder of Vanguard is probably BlackRock. And this person said, this is where it gets dark. Vanguard has a unique structure that blocks us from seeing who the actual shareholders are. No, you don't say. They don't want us to know. The elite who own Vanguard don't want anyone to know they are the owners of one of the most powerful companies on Earth. Still, if you dig deep enough, you can find clues as to who these owners are. The owners of the wealthiest, most powerful company on Earth can be expected to be among the wealthiest individuals on Earth. Well, that would make sense. In 2016, Oxfam reported that the combined wealth of the richest 1% in the world was equal to the wealth of the remaining 99%. So that is how much of a wealth, what would you call it? A wealth disparity. That the 1% richest have a combined wealth of the remaining 99%. That's disgusting that there's that big of a gap. And in 2018, it was reported that the world's richest people get 82% of all the money earned around the world in 2017. So, by their calculations, in 2017, the world's richest people got 82% of all the money earned. So, only 18% of all the money earned in 2017 went out to the common folk. That went out to the peasants. we get the crumbs. We are pretty much vermin to them, and they let us get some crumbs just to keep us alive, while they just gobble up everything else. And it says, in reality, we can assume that the owners of Vanguard are among the 0.001% richest people on the planet. That is a very tiny number. So just imagine the wealth that this tiny fraction controls and has at their disposal. There are trillionaires out there in this world. They don't tell you they're trillionaires, but there are trillionaires already. They have fortunes that are worth trillions. And, they would never want you to know that. And it says, according to Forbes, there were 2,075 billionaires in the world as of March 2020. And I'm sure that number's gone up since March 2020, because the whole C-19 debacle and everything that resulted from it resulted in one of the biggest wealth transfers the world has ever seen. So I'm sure that number's gone up. But it's saying that the Oxfam data is showing that 2/3 of billionaires obtain their fortunes via inheritance, monopoly, and or cronyism. So pretty much 2/3, of all the billionaires, they have their money just because they happen to be born to the right family bloodline. So if you think bloodlines still don't have influence and control over the world, you would be mistaken. Family bloodlines certainly do have a lot of control, because the fortunes that they amassed in the past have just allowed them to continue to increase those fortunes, and all of their heirs and lineage are going to inherit those fortunes. And unless they do something very extreme to blow it, they're always going to have those fortunes. And it says, this means that Vanguard and Blackrock is in the hands of the richest families on Earth. So who owns Blackrock and Vanguard? Well, it's the richest families. And it says here, among them we find the Rothschilds, the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, the Bushes, and the Morgan families, just to name a few. Now, I'll mention that them naming these families probably means they're not the tippy top ones. The real families and bloodlines that are probably at the tippy top, I'm sure their names are probably not known. They don't want public spotlight, and they'll keep that on the hush. So the ones you do see in the public realm, they're most likely not the tippy top. And it says here, many of these families, they belong to royal bloodlines and are the founders of our central banking system. So, like I said, it dates back, centuries, in reality, clear back to the creation of the central banking and the Federal Reserve. The family bloodlines that were behind that, there's still the bloodlines today that have that power. There's just that their fortunes have, gotten much, much bigger. And it says the United Nations in just about every industry on the planet. Oh, that's the founders of our central banking system, the United Nations, in just about every industry on the planet. So those bloodlines were behind all that. And then this guy goes even further into his documentary. I'm not sure what documentary they were talking about. It says they only summarized a small piece of the whole film. So I don't see where they have a link or anything for a documentary. Oh, I see it right here. To understand what's really going on, watch Tim Gielen's hour-long documentary, Monopoly, Who Owns the World. So, if you want to look into this more and get some more information, watch that documentary by him. And monopoly is a good term for it. And we were supposed to be the country, that doesn't allow monopolies and breaks them up. But we seen how well that went with the Standard Oil monopoly, and how breaking that up panned out. In case you don't know, breaking up Standard Oil just made Rockefeller super rich beyond just owning that one monopoly company. He made out like a bandit owning multiple companies then. So, yeah. A financial coup d'etat. So, speaking on the central bankers, this Gielen guy, he interviewed Catherine Austin Fitts. If you haven't heard of Catherine Austin Fitts, I suggest you look up her work. She has very good insight into the banking system, and she'll reveal a good amount of information for you. So look her up if you're not already aware. And she believes central bankers are at the heart of the global takeover. Well, of course, the Vanguard and Blackrock, they're asset managers, but essentially they're central bankers. And the families that own them are, behind the central banking. So yes, they are at the heart of the global takeover. And it says she also believes they are the ones pressuring private companies to implement the clearly illegal COVID jab mandates. Their control is so great, few companies have the ability to take a stand against them. So that goes to the power that the Vanguard and BlackRock yield. Just think of how much power and control you would have if you're managing $20 trillion in assets. It's pretty much any company, any industry, if they want to get investment money to expand, or, to even start a business, you need investment money. That investment money ultimately comes from BlackRock or Vanguard. So if they don't want, their money going for something, they won't allow it. They have pretty much complete say so, in where they invest their money and who gets it, and well, if you want our money, well, there might be stipulations to it, or you can have our money, but you need to do this, or it's the amount of power garnered by them is immense, and pretty much beyond belief. It's not just, they're pressuring private companies to implement the COVID mandates. It's, they pressure companies to do a whole wide range of things, spanning to the whole woke mentality that, I was saying. They pressure the companies to go woke, and push that, social subversion agenda, to destroy people's minds, make them degenerates. They can pressure companies to pretty much do anything. And she says here, I think the central bankers are really depending on the smart grid and creepy technology to help them go to the last steps of financial control, which is what I think they're pushing for. And that's a lot of truth there. And like I said, don't get too worried or fearful of a lights out, scenario or infrastructure down, because the smart grid and all the creepy technology, they need that for the control. And they need it to, get the last steps of their agenda, whatever that agenda fully is. They're going to rely heavily on the ever-increasing smart grid. So a lights out, take our power away scenario, it's very likely not to happen, because, they are highly dependent on it. And she says, What we've seen is a tremendous effort to bankrupt the population and the governments so that it's much easier for the central bankers to take control. That's what I've been writing about since 1998. This is the financial coup d'etat. And yep, they're definitely trying to bankrupt us and the governments. I mean, look at our current government and all them trillions they just passed in COVID. Added to all the other trillions. We're pretty much about bankrupt, and the people are pretty much about bankrupt. This whole C-19 thing they did, the greatest wealth transfer in history, and that wealth went from the ordinary populace to that 0.001% richest. So they just robbed us there and bankrupted us. And now, everybody's hurting, and recovery doesn't look good, going into the future. And it says the financial coup d'etat is being consolidated, where central bankers just serve jurisdiction over the treasury and the tax money. If they can get the jab passports in with the CBDC, which is central bank digital currency, then it will be able to take taxes out of our accounts and take our assets. So this is a real coup d'etat. And that's one of their end goals, is to have a central bank digital currency. They get a digital currency, no real money, or, no physical money, I should say. They can control everything. They can control where you spend that money, what you spend it on, what you buy, who you want to pass it to, the amounts, that you can buy or spend. If you didn't pay taxes on it, from somewhere, they can just take that right out of there. They can lock your account and not let you do anything. It would give them so much control, the digital currency. And that's what they're working towards. You can see the steps they're taking. All they need to do is get rid of a couple of the oldest generations, and they'll eventually be able to do away with physical money. And in my opinion, the whole C-19 thing, a lot of that was to target the older generations. They were the most vulnerable, and they were the most hard hit as far as deaths go with the C-19 debacle. And if you're paying attention, the nursing homes and stuff, they were pretty much, left for dead there. So they were definitely a target of the C-19 thing. So, as the older generations go, the younger ones coming in are brainwashed and indoctrinated from birth, and all they know is a digital age now. So it won't be long before digital currency will be making an appearance. And then it goes down here to some Spartacus letter where somebody starts saying the real truth about C-19 and whatnot. I don't know why that has anything to do here with who owns the world. It goes, a criminal conspiracy. And it pretty much is a criminal conspiracy. The whole C-19 matter is all criminal conspiracy, and many people in the highest levels should all be arrested and tried, and many of them probably executed for the amount of murder that they've done. Because the whole C-19 was BS. It was intentional, and all the actions taken around it were intentional, to achieve an ends. It goes down here through just all kinds of stuff. Billing insurance, fraudulent COVID-19 cures. They're targeting people, shutting down, genuine doctors that want to think for themselves. Here's the FDA banned ranitidine, which is your Zantac. Your over-the-counter is supposedly safe. Well, it's banned now due to supposed MDMA contamination. Ranitidine is not only an H2 blocker used as an acid, but also has a powerful antioxidant effect, scavenging hydroxyl radicals. this gives it utility in treating COVID-19. So is that one of the reasons why they recalled and got rid of ranitidine here before C19? That's curious. I never seen that until now here. I know my wife, she used to eat ranitidine like candy. So, yeah, it's interesting. Maybe they did get rid of it because it has, a utility in treating COVID. But it goes down here. These megalomaniacs have raided the pension funds of the free world. So people relying on pensions, well, the greatest wealth transfer in history, well, a lot of that moved from the pension funds to that 0.001%. Wall Street is insolvent and has had an ongoing liquidity crisis since the end of 2019. The aim now is to exert total full spectrum physical, mental, and financial control over humanity before we realize just how badly we've been extorted. So that's the thing. They're trying to get it all in before we figure it out. And sadly, they've done a pretty good job of it. The pandemic and its response serve multiple purposes for the controlling elite. And it's concealing a depression brought on by the usurious plunder of our economies conducted by rentier capitalists and absentee owners who produce absolutely nothing of any value to society, destroying small businesses and eroding the middle class, transferring trillions of dollars of wealth from the American public and into the pockets of billionaires and special interests. That's that largest wealth transfer I was talking about. Engaging in insider trading, buying stock in biotech companies, and shorting brick-and-mortar businesses and travel companies with the aim of collapsing face-to-face commerce and tourism and replacing it with e-commerce and servitization. Insider trading, buying stock in biotech companies. Can anyone say Nancy Pelosi? It's funny, our politicians are multimillionaires, but they get a rather meager salary. And this is all the digitization or digitalization. The digital age, the 5G, they want the Internet of Things. They want to collapse the face-to-face commerce and have it all e-commerce, all done via the Internet of Things. Creating a casus belli for war with China, encouraging us to attack them, wasting American lives and treasure, and diving us to the brink of nuclear Armageddon. Well, they should put Russia in there too, China and Russia. Those are the boogeymen, the new fear porn now. And establishing technological and biosecurity frameworks for population control and technocratic socialist smart cities where everyone's movements are despotically tracked, all in anticipation of widespread automation, joblessness, and food shortages, by using the false guise of a vaccine to compel cooperation. This is very important. The establishment of technological and biosecurity frameworks for population control and smart cities. And the C19, the whole, that whole narrative, that has allowed for many, many of these frameworks to be put into place. Even if these frameworks are not being utilized, right at this moment, they are in place now and they are ready to go in the future for population control and the smart city control. They will be able to know everyone's movements, be able to track everything, and it's all in anticipation of widespread automation, joblessness, and food shortages. So this is the stuff to come. The elites are trying to pull up the ladder, erase upward mobility for large segments of the population, call political opponents and other undesirables, and put the remainder of humanity on a tight leash, rationing our access to certain goods and services that they have deemed high impact, such as automobile use, tourism, meat consumption, and so on. So, sounds like they're getting the futuristic gulags ready for us. They will continue to have their own luxuries as part of a strict caste system, pretty much akin to feudalism. Why are they doing this? Simple. The elites are neo-Malthusians and believe that we are overpopulated and that resource depletion will collapse civilization in a matter of a few short decades, which that's just an excuse. But it will be akin to feudalism, the control that they want. And we are overpopulated, but not in the sense that they portray. It's regional overpopulation. The big cities and stuff. That's the overpopulation. Yes, we have plenty of land for everybody in the world. As they say, but that's not feasible, and shouldn't be used as an argument because we obviously can't all spread out and have a little section. A lot of land, isn't sustainable for humans. So the overpopulation is more or less overpopulated cities and urban areas. And there's things we could do to correct that and offset it, but the actual things that would work doesn't make the elite rich. So they use the whole climate change nonsense and stuff where they can just keep pilfering us. So that's all just narrative and agenda stories. And that's pretty much the end of the article here. It says this to be read as a warning and have full knowledge and understanding of what they are doing and how it's going to unjustly harm millions and millions of innocent people. So, you go back to, how much power does Blackrock and Vanguard have with this monopoly that's currently in place? They have pretty much unlimited power. And the families that are behind these companies that own them, they have unlimited power. Who was it? One of the Rothschilds has said, I care not, who owns the vote, or, he cares not about the politicians. It's, whoever controls the money controls the country. So, these two companies controlled by private families, probably the 0.001%, they have the control over countries. And that's, this is global. So all your first world countries, probably a lot of your second world countries, they're all under the manipulation and control of these companies. It's going to be a central bank technocracy, pretty much. So I just wanted to point that out to everybody. If you weren't aware of this will open a lot of eyes, or get you thinking. When you start thinking about individual companies, keep this in mind that everything's owned by these two companies. Are you going to eat Lucky Charms or Fruit Loops, or this cereal, and you think they're competitors? They're all the same. It don't matter what brand you buy, that money that you're paying to them is going right to the same top. So you could give your money to Pepsi or you give your money to Coke, it don't matter. The same owners get it. So I hope this was informative. I hope you learned something. And just take care out there. We're heading down a rocky road and the future doesn't look good. So everyone, find the gold pill. Let God into your heart and find spirituality for change, because we're going to need it. Take care, everyone. I'm out. Peace.